For tuning into today's class. So I'm going to be doing some things on the floor to start. You'll need 2 blocks, and in supporting your arms you'll be doing some stretches and some active mobilization of the shoulders. So you can start seated, and by sitting I'm just going to sit cross-legged, and by sitting cross-legged I'm going to squeeze into the middle. And then as I'm moving my legs into the middle, I'm trying to sit up a bit taller. And then by being in a base level position, I'm just going to take the right hand to the right side. And then in taking the hand out to the side, I'm going to lean back in space. So as I'm leaning back, trying to turn my upper body to the left. So if I had my hand behind my head, like Noah has his hand behind his head, he's going to try to move his head back more. So he's going to lift his chin a little bit. So if I look up towards the ceiling, I'll be able to expose more of the front of my body. If I'm looking down, not that this is bad, it's gonna expose more of the left side of your neck. So just try to lean forward in space, and then in leaning forward, just come into the middle, and then also lean back. So I'm gonna try to find where the tissues aren't necessarily moving on my right side, so that I can find the best angle. There's a lot of dense tension in my rib cage, and the more I remove that tension, the easier it is to breathe. So just take a couple deep breaths. If the hand's out to the side, right, it's going to help with the shoulder. If my hand is behind my head, I'm cradling the head and I'm moving the head back in space. Both are very good ways to do it. So bring yourself back up and then recross the legs. And as you recross the legs, I'm going to take the left hand to the left side, and I'm going to reach my right hand to the right. And then in taking the hand out, like with sustainability with people, usually why people come out of the poses is because they go too far. So if you want to hold the pose longer, you don't have to really go as far as you can go, and then you can breathe and you can relax and you can really spend more quality time in the pose. So if I took my hand behind my head, like I said on the right side, I could lift the chin, I could lift the chest. I'm turning my upper body to the right side. Like I said, I'm not going to go as far as I can go so that I can breathe. If I'm leaning forward in space, it's going to expose more of my back. If I'm leaning back in space, it's going to expose more of my front. Reason I'm doing this is so that it's easier to twist, and by twisting, it'll be easier to stand up. You'll be able to have an easier time in extending, within back bending. So take the right arm out to the right, just let the head hang to the floor, and then bring yourself back up into an upright position. So have yourself sitting, and in sitting, you're going to have the feet together and the knees wide. And with the feet together, I'm just going to use my hands to lift up a little bit. So just more of a neutral position. And I'm pushing my feet together to widen out my knees, just to get myself to be a little bit more upright. Now, if my hips are off the floor, I'm producing some traction in my spine, predominantly more of the lower back, because there's so much weight within the pelvis. So take a couple deep breaths, lift yourself up in space, and then bring your hips down. And then when you bring your hips down, we're going to take the knees up, and then come into an all-four position. So have the hands just out in front of you underneath the shoulders, and with the hands underneath the shoulders, just let the chest come down in between the arms, and then just push through the hands, and these are just scapula push-ups. So bring the chest down in between the arms, and then push through the hands. When you're doing this, try to feel if one side, or if the scapula doesn't necessarily move. It may not move as much on one side. You can let the chest come down for a moment, and then you can press through the hands. And this pressing is really what you're going to need for plank, down dog, like any arm balance. For the most part, it's going to support you in this position. So just come back into the middle and circle your hips in a circular motion. So just get the hips to circle around, and then circle around the opposite direction. I'm doing this just so that you can kind of get a sense of how your back feels and moving, especially in the morning. It might not move as well. And then just come back into the middle and take the hands to the left side and look high over the left shoulder. So look over the left shoulder. You could keep it up, but just bring it down and let it relax. and then bring it up again. So bring the head up, and this could be a motion. You could do it a number of times to get the head to lift better. Take the hands to the right side, and with the hands to the right, you can lift the head, you can lift the chest. Think I'm pulling your left hip back in space, and then as you pull it back, then you'll get more of an exposure through the left side of your upper body. And then bring yourself back into the middle, and then back into the middle. Have the hands just underneath the shoulders, round through the shoulders, and lift up into a plank pose. So take the knees up off the floor, push back through the heels of the feet. You're pressing through the fingertips, through the knuckles, and you want a good support in supporting yourself. So I'm reaching back, right, through the heels. I'm extending to the top of the head. Then bring the knees down and sit back into a child's pose. So you sit back. As you sit back, the arms could be forward, the arms could be, overhead, and I'm turning my thumbs out to rotate the shoulders, right? Come back up into an all-four position and go up into a down dog. Tuck the toes, lift the hips, pull back with the feet, and as you pull back with the feet and you pull back through the thighs, you're going to stretch out more of your upper body and your back, right? Come forward into a plank, and then in a plank, you're going to lower to your knees, so you're going to have to move back. So I'm going to lower to the height of my elbows, and then I'm going to bring myself all the way down, and then when I come down, I'm going to take my arms into a 90-degree angle. So take the arms out into a cactus position. I like fists. You don't have to be in fists. As you move the arms into a wide position, you want to think of working, not that you're trying to burn yourself up, but you're working and taking the arms up, because these are really, for the most part, for most people, they're pretty weak muscles, and in strengthening them, your shoulders are going to be much happier in doing that. Bring the arms down and then come up into a Sphinx pose. So just lift yourself up, look high over the right shoulder, look over the left. Right, pull yourself forward towards your hands, your fingers, right, and then bring yourself down, and then this is where you're going to use the block. So I'm going to take my block and I'm going to have it on either the lowest level or the second level. You have good flexibility in the shoulder and strength. Have it on the second level. It's okay if it's, just start out on the bottom level if you need to. So my head is down and I'm going to lift my arm off the floor, but I don't want to compensate my rib cage. So I'm keeping the ribs in. I'm going to take the arm out to the left, just like a warrior two. And then as you take it out to the left, turn the thumb down and then bring the arm back, kind of behind you. And then bring it forward, and think I'm pushing down into the arm and you're resisting that. And then as you take it forward, keep lifting the arm up away from the mat, and then bring the arm down. And then we're going to go over to the other side. But because I don't have as much space, I'm going to go over to the other side just because I don't have that space over here. So take the right arm forward, and with the right arm forward, you're going to take it up off the floor. As you take it up off the floor, take it out to the right side. And then as you take it out to the right, when it's at the level of the shoulder, turn the thumb down, rotate the arm in, and then bring it, it doesn't have to be back behind you, but it could. And then when you take it out to the side, keep the ribs pulling in, right? But lifting the arm away. So it's a really good active way to help strengthen the shoulder and stretch it out. So take it forward, lift it up, and then bring it down for a moment, and then take it up again. So take it up, take it out to the side. Think I'm pulling the arm out more for you. Bring it back, thumb turns down. Bring it out to the side. Try not to compensate too much through the upper body. Right. Keep lifting through the right arm, and then bring the arm down, and then come back up into Sphinx pose. So lift up into Sphinx, pull yourself forward, look high over the right shoulder, look over the left, bring yourself center and stay here. Right? You don't have to come up into a higher position, but I'm going to bring the hands underneath me. I'm going to lift up into a low cobra, something higher possibly. I'm going to bring myself down. I'm going to lift up again. Try to use as little effort in the hands as possible, and then bring yourself down. One last time, bring yourself up. Come all the way up, and then as you come up, you can broaden the shoulders, broaden the back, get more weight in your lower body. Bring yourself forward, bring yourself down, and then come up into an all four position or press up into a plank and go back up into a down dog. So pull back through the thighs, pull back through the hips, push through the hands, push through the fingertips. Think I'm pulling your upper body forward in space. Think I'm pulling your hips back in space. Now you could swing forward and through into an up dog. So come forward, come through, and then go back up into a down dog. Right, come down onto your knees, and then when you come down onto your knees, have the toes tucked. And with the toes tucked, you can sit back onto the heels. And then as you sit back onto the heels, you can bring yourself up into an upright position. So I'm tucking the toes. I'm going to take the arms into a cactus position. I'm going to take the hands forward. I'm going to bring them back up into a cactus, right? I'm going to bring them forward. And then I'm going to bring them back, right? Untuck the toes. Try to sit back on the feet. And if you're sitting on blocks or you're sitting on props, this is all really good work. It's just you don't want to do too much too soon in the knee or the feet. Sure, you could just try to do it, but you got to know your own limitations and work through them honestly. So I'm going to come back onto my hands and my knees. I'm going to push through the hands and just let my chest drop down, and then pushing through the hands, I'm going to round through the shoulders. So I'm not doing cat-cows, just so that you can kind of see the difference between the two. Bring the chest down and then push. It's a really subtle exercise, but so helpful in making you stronger on your hands. So bring the chest down again. Push through the hands, round through the back, then tuck the toes, come up into plank. So keep that good strength in the hands, the arms, then go back up into a down dog. So pull all the way back up into a down dog. All right, we're gonna walk the hands back towards the feet. Just for a moment. You're gonna walk forward if you can. Maybe you're not doing this. Walk back into plank. So grip the floor, keep the weight forward. Walk the hands back. Walk them forward. Right, last time holding plank. So push through the hands, get smaller through the front of your body, and then go back up into a down dog. Pull back through the thighs, pull back through the hips. Walk the feet forward to the middle of your mat. Walk your hands back towards your feet. Take your hands up to the left side, change the angle. Not that you have to do it like me, but when my hands are separated, it's like a Y position. So when my arms are in wide, a Y, it's getting more space between the scapula. Take the hands to the right side, and with the hands to the right, I can move my hands out wider. I could bend my knees more. I'm going to take the hands back into the middle, and I'm going to roll myself up into a standing position. So you can roll up, and then as you roll up, I'm going to hook the thumbs behind me. I'm going to come up onto the toes. So lift the heels, broad shoulders, broad upper back. I'm going to lower the heels and lower the arms. Take the arms all the way up overhead, hook the thumbs and bend the knees, and bring the weight into the heels of the feet. So just see if you're leaning into one foot more than the other. Not that that's such a negative thing, but as you move the weight into, say, your opposing foot, it'll help in bringing better strength into the legs. Come back up to straight legs, come up on the toes, lift the heels off the floor, and then lower the heels, and exhale, lower the arms. So the knees, the arms, I'm just going to bend the knees a little bit and straighten. So let's just say your ankle doesn't move as well. A big reason why I'm doing this is just a few repetitions here. And then when you get into a fuller range of motion, it'll help you. Whether it's this is the beginning of a full squat, and then you can straighten the legs. So come forward, top of the mat, take the arms up overhead, fold forward into a forward fold, and step the left foot back into a long runner's lunge. So in a long runner's lunge, just move the weight around. Try to get a little bit longer, wider through the hips. You'll create better extension. And then take the right arm up to the ceiling so the right arm is high. Now my thumb is pointed forward. I'm going to turn it in, and then I'm going to turn it back. I'm going to turn the arm in. Now think wider rather than back or anything like that, right? Just get the hand to move up more. Then turn it back for a moment and bring the right hand down. Step the left foot forward and step the right foot back. And with the right foot back, you can kind of move the weight around, get long, look forward if you need to, be up on blocks. Take the left arm up to the ceiling, turn the thumb forward, and then turn the thumb back. So you're getting more internal rotation. And then rotate the thumb back, open through the shoulders, open through the chest. Take another deep breath, rotate it in. And then exhale, you can rotate the thumb back, broad shoulders, and then bring the left hand down and step the right foot forward. So both feet are forward, you're in a forward fold. Step the left foot back into warrior one, come up into an overhead position. So lift through the arms, lift through the chest, push through the feet. You could hook the thumbs into a thumb lock. I'm trying to keep the ribs in. So remember when you're on the floor, you're trying to keep that reference so that you're not just kind of hanging out in your lower back. So straighten through the right leg. Try to turn the hips to the right a bit. And then go back to bending the right knee. And not that you have to turn more to the right, but that's most likely what you need more in this type of position. Right? I'm going to step the left foot in a little bit closer. And this could be my balancing pose. Right? A little easier than, quite a bit easier than warrior three. But I'm going to come forward into warrior three. And then in warrior three, if I'm ready, I'm going to reach for the floor. I'm going to bring the hands down. Right? Blocks, of course, too. Right? Bring the hands back up into prayer. I say this all the time. You don't want to get too comfortable in either position. Right? Bring the hands down. You know, it's good if you need stability and you need to be quiet and kind of more at peace. But the moving or changing the directions will, keep you more in balance in terms of challenge, right? So bring the hands down, step the left foot back into a low lunge, and take the right arm up to the ceiling. So I say this often, it's the twisting, especially if you don't have you have a more difficult time in back bending, will definitely help. So bring the right hand down, step the left foot forward, and step the right foot back. Right heel comes down, come up into a warrior one on the left side. So you're up in an overhead position. Again, I like a thumb lock, doesn't have to be that. Hands can be wider than the shoulders, which is really good. But as I'm doing this, I'm going to try to turn more and more to my left, right? I'm just going to keep that reference of the floor into my rib cage. And then go back to having the left leg straight. Turn the hips to the left. You'll feel more of an opening on the right side. And then go back to bending the left knee. Tailbone's down, pubic bone's up. Arms are extending up. And then I'm going to come forward into my left foot. And I could kind of drag it forward. I could keep it there. I could come forward and I could come down. You could use the wall, of course, right? I have a wall out in front of me. That's a great way so the hands can come down. Blocks or the floor, I could take the hands up. Right? The knee could be bent, is a common question. Knee could certainly be bent. You could bring the hands down. You're trying to get more into your hips. That's why you square the hips more. It's okay if they're crooked. Bring the hands down one last time. Right. Step back into a low lunge. Take the left arm up to the ceiling. The left arm is high. Open through the chest, open through the shoulders. I think I'm pulling back on your hips. And then bring the left hand down and then step the right foot forward. So the right foot forward, I'm just going to move back just so you can see me a bit more. I'm going to separate my feet a little wider than the shoulders. I'm going to grab the elbows, bend the knees. I'm going to squat down as best that I can, as low as I can. I'm going to try to get the armpits and the knees together. And then when you look, you probably have something that's in front of you that's flush or even, right? So I very well turn to my left. That's just what that's how my body orients in space. So I'm going to turn more and more to the right. And so if someone looked at me, they're like, well, he's turned to the right, he's crooked. But this is actually more center for me. So people will get more and more and more and more to one side, and then it becomes problematic. So it's just kind of, always a good thing to reference is what's in front of you and try to see things that you can't necessarily see, right? Come back into a forward fold, fold all the way forward into a forward bend, and then step back into a plank. So grip the floor, push through the hands, right? Reach back through the heels, get nice and shallow through the front of your body, and then take it back up into a down dog. Go all the way back up into a down dog, pull back through the thighs, pull back through the hips, right? Come down onto the knees, and then when you come down on the knees, I'm going to sit, if I can, again, back onto the heels. So not everybody loves this. There's a big difference between pain and discomfort. So if it's really, really painful, obviously you don't have to do it. But if it's like something you don't necessarily like to do, like I don't really love doing my taxes, but I know that I have to do them. It's kind of like that. You have to, not that you have to do that today, but it's something that you possibly most likely need. Like some things, the most difficult things that you practice in yoga or any form of training, when it's difficult, it might actually be the best thing for you. So if you're a person that chooses the path of least resistance, you actually need, that. Some people have a hard time moving. They need gentle movements or easy movements, and then eventually it could be more progressive movements. And then someone that really just moves all the time, meditation and breath work is probably the best thing for them. So I'm going to untuck the toes and sit back onto my feet. So when I sit back on my feet, just kind of feel which ankle actually needs more leverage. Like my right ankle moves much better than my left. So I'm leaning into my left side. I'm a little crooked for that reason, I'm going to tuck the toes, I'm going to use the block, and I'm going to try to take my knees off the floor. So I'm going to lift them up, and then I'm going to lower, I'm going to lift them up, and I'm going to lower. It's okay if you're using your hands a lot here, but eventually it's more the strength of the abdomen. Go back to tucking the toes, sitting upright, just a couple deep breaths. Right, and then I'm going to come forward onto my hands and my knees. I'm going to use the blocks. So I'm going to grip the floor. And then as you grip the floor, you can kind of push through the hands. That's up, Marco. And then as you round through the shoulders, you're going to lift up into a plank. So I'm just trying to get more support within my shoulders. People that can't support themselves on their hands, it's usually a lack of tension in the shoulders, and then it can be problematic for the wrists. So the good thing about the blocks is that you're going to build up better strength in the hands. So if you don't do any kind of pulling exercises, not that you have to, right? It's a good thing to have because it's again going to help balance out the wrists. Go back up into a down dog, and then with a higher level, you can push further back. So you can really pull back through the thighs. And you're wanting to, again, reference the floor like we did in the very beginning class. So we were lying on the belly and we were opening up the shoulders. So keep the ribs in, keep the hips pulling back, right? And then come back into a plank and then come down on the knees just so that you can move the blocks out of the way. So have the hands underneath you and push through the hands and round through the shoulders. So whether you're doing plank on your hand or you're doing plank on the forearm, you really want to connect into the shoulder and the serratus. If you don't have that, it can be problematic and dangerous, right? So it's not to say that you couldn't do it, you just need the stability, right? So I'm gonna come down onto the elbows and then reach back to the heels, and I'm gonna support myself here. And you don't have to do this, you could just hold this, right? But get your shoulders involved, spin the heels to the left, and then take the right arm up if you can. So it just requires a little bit of a different strength in being on the forearm, but really, really good for the adductors. The adductors are engaged, and that's, you know, a pretty weak muscle for most people, and that's partially why the knees are so high when people sit on the floor. So bring the right arm down, hold the plank for a breath, and then spin the heels to the right. Now I could keep my left hand down, I could have my left foot forward, and that's a really good way of supporting yourself. You could take the left arm up to the ceiling, so you're getting broad through the shoulders. I'm pushing through the right arm here. It's good to come down when you need it, right? Take breaks, but go back up if you can. You know, that's, you could apply that in any type of pose that gives you, it's more challenging for you. So bring the left arm down, come down, and if you can, take the feet just a little bit off the floor and see what that's like. And then bring them up just a little bit more, and maybe over the knees or more fully back. You can look over the right shoulder. You can look over the left. You can look center and pull yourself forward. And then bring your feet down and bring your legs down. And then one more time, I'm gonna take my left arm forward again with the block. So this is what we did in the very beginning of class, right? We're towards the warm-up. So I'm taking the left arm up off the floor, and this is really what you need for a handstand, is getting the arms to pull back, you know, the alignment of the shoulder. Then I'm going to take it up over the block and out to the side, and then I'm going to turn the thumb down, so you're getting a full range of motion into the shoulder. And then I'm going to bring it forward or out to the side, but keep lifting it up and out. So if my arm was into the floor and I'm stretching it out, that's good, but you want to build up strength in the shoulder so that you can support the range of motion that you have, right? And then bring the arm down. So I'm just going to turn to the side a little bit just so that I have the room beside me. And then I'm going to take the right arm forward in space and lift it, right? So think we're shaking hands, right? And you're pulling my arm forward and I'm pulling your arm back, right? So then as I move it forward in space, then I'm taking it out to the side. Then I'm going to turn the thumb down. Again, try to keep your ribs from compensating. I'm going to take it out to the side. So pull in. So think that the inner part of the body's moving away from the floor, and then you're not like crushing the floor with your rib cage. And then you can bring the arm down. And then I'll come up onto my hands for some cobra work. So I'm going to lift up into a low cobra. Again, not as much with my hands here. And then I'll bring myself down. I'm going to take myself up again. And then each time I come down, I'm getting a little bit longer. I'm going to have a block ready for me because I'm going to use the block today for back bend. I'm going to curl up into a low or high cobra, and then just kind of see the gap that you have between your abdomen and the hips. And you could put the block underneath your pelvis. I have it in my pelvis. It certainly could be the abdomen. So if you have an excessive amount of pressure in your lower back, this can be really, really helpful. So it's not to say that you have to do it all the time, but especially like you do a lot of Surya Namaskar, or you do a lot of cobra, right? It's just good to take the pressure off the back. My left psoas is tighter, so I'm leaning into my left side. I'm using the block to manipulate the tissues so that it's assisting my front body and my back body. Right? Just come down over the block if you can, and just let the body weight rest into the block. Now the block might not be a good fit, so you don't have to use it. So you're like, this is bone on block and it hurts. You want to be on the soft tissue. So I'm wide enough to do that. Not that I'm a really wide person through my pelvis. So curl up into a low cobra or something higher and lift yourself up. Again, you could be looking over either shoulder, right? And then bring yourself down, and I'm going to use the block to help engage through my abdomen. So I'm going to tuck the toes. I'm going to try to move my belly away from the block and lift up, right? So that I understand how to pull in, right? And then bring the knees down, and then with the knees down, I'm going to put the block off the side because I don't need it. So try to turn the hands in and see if you can turn them in even a little bit more. Really, really good for the thoracic. You know, you get the hands to turn in. Most binds are internal rotation. You know, that's what it is. So I'm going to circle around my hands, which will help stretch out the forearms. Now, again, if this is too much, you don't have to turn the hands in as much as I am. You know, more isn't necessarily better. So you can move around, stretch out the forearms, stretch out the wrist. And again, over time, you might be like, oh, that's what it's doing to my upper back. And that's, you know, an area that's, you know, for most people is not as pliable as we'd like it to be. So come back into the middle, turn the hands forward. And with the hands forward, push through the hands, round through the shoulders, and lift up into a plank. As you come up into plank, go back up into a down dog. So go all the way back. If you want it, swing forward and through into an up dog. You could certainly do chaturanga if that's something that you prefer and you know that it's benefiting you. You can go back up into a down dog. So I just build up a lot of straight arm strength for people so that eventually they can do bent arm transitions. So push back through the thighs, you know, extend the arms, you know, push the hands into the floor, rotate the shoulders out. Again, reference the floor with your rib cage. And then walk the feet forward to the middle of the mat and walk your hands back toward your feet and slowly roll yourself up to standing. So bring yourself up, and then when you come up, so shoulders govern a lot in terms of how you extend, how you twist. Also what will really help you is your hips, you know, strengthening the hips, exposing the hips to a greater range. So I'm going to take my left leg up off the floor. And I'm using this more as a counter for some of the back bending that we did. So I'm going to take the left leg out to the left, and when I take it out to the left, you can certainly use your hand. I say this all the time, like if you don't have the flexibility, use your hand because you probably need the leverage. You know, and in some forms of training, flexibility is kind of really frowned upon, but if you don't have it, you actually need it. You could bring it forward, you can pull it in, and you can bring it down. Like you can take the right leg up. So just not to talk badly about mobility work, but you could do mobility work for a long, long time, and if you're not getting enough range in strengthening, that's why you'll need more flexibility work. So you really need both. I could take it out to the right, I could try to lift it up more. I'm using my right hand more on this side because I actually need it more on this side. But you know, we can certainly do it without. You can bring it forward, you can bring it up, you can bring it down, and that'll really help your tree pose. So you could take your left foot up, with the left foot coming up, you can bring it into the inside of the thigh. It's okay if the foot is crooked, the bottom, you know, the foundational foot, but try to keep your hips in the middle, just so that you're not swaying, and take the arms up into an overhead position. And like a handstand, you really want to keep the front of your body in, and that's going to help your lower back. And like a headstand. And I like headstands, but you can get away with really poor form in a headstand, and then later on you're like, well, why does my neck hurt, or why does my back hurt? So you really want to keep better alignment. Right? Bring the arms down, and the knee forward, and the foot down, and then take the right foot up into the left thigh. So you can pull it up, you know, pushing into the inner thigh with the right foot, take the arms up, drive down through the right heel, you know, again, keep the arms back, try to frame the arms with the head, and then get the head to frame into the arms. You know, just kind of see if your head's more forward and down from, you know, sitting, you know, or just habitual. It could be, you know, something that, you know, genetics. And then bring the arms down and bring the knee forward and the foot down. And then just take the feet out into a wide stance. So you can do a little bit of a horse stance and then a triangle just to complement, you know, what the opening of the hips. So turn the feet out a little bit, take the arms out wide, bend the knees, and push the knees apart. So I like this for like kind of if you don't have a lot of time in practice, you could certainly do this for a minute, 2 minutes, something like that. And it's quite demanding in the inner thighs and the hips, and it's a very good way to, you know, get the legs to be stronger. Like, not that warrior 1 or warrior 2 is bad, but at some point you get so good at that you're not really getting stronger. You can really rely more on your flexibility here. Unless I was sitting all the way down, then I'm doing just that, right? So bring yourself up, bring the arms down, and then turn the right foot in and turn the left foot out. So I'm going to do the left side first, just in case you need more left side work. We can repeat it twice, right? So take the arms out wide, reach out to the left. You could grab the left shin or the foot or the thigh. You know, go high initially. Go really, really high up on the leg. And just, you know, for a moment, you know, you're getting more space, and then it's so much easier to get lower, right? And because we've been moving the arms in space, keep it up if that's your practice. But you could bring it forward, overhead, and then take it up in space, and just see if the arm is moving more freely from what we did today in practice. You know, that's the idea behind that, is, you know, so that your arms are stronger, they're healthier, you know, they don't give you problems. Bring yourself up and turn the left foot in, turn the right foot out. Use your feet, use your legs, reach to the right. As you go to the right, try to extend more through the upper body than pulling the hip back. Not that that's such a bad thing, but I want, for me personally, I want more extension through the spine. So take the left arm up. Again, you could be high up on the leg. That just has a different, I've done less of this high position than low. So this is actually, for me, I feel it's actually more difficult in some ways. So if I get low, aesthetically it may look better, right? I'm gonna take the arm forward, but like when I'm practicing on my own, I'm not always looking like the yoga ad, so to speak. You can take the left arm up, turn through the chest, use your feet, bring it forward as you exhale. Take it back up, and then bring yourself back up, use your feet, come all the way up, and then turn the feet forward and take the feet out into a wide stance. Again, these are really weak muscles for the most part, and they're also pretty tight. So side splits can be more complicated than front splits. So if I had any kind of pain or discomfort in my feet, my knees, I definitely make the stance shorter. And then over time, as you can hold the weight, I like these because it just something that you can, as you develop it, then you can do it almost at any time. And that's rather than just being really warm. So I'm going to bring the hands down just as a reference in case you need that. So hands could be in blocks. Right? I'm either hugging my legs in or I'm pushing my legs apart. Right? And it's not just for aesthetics to come up, but it's again a way of building strength. And you know, maybe you're on a chair or you're using the floor or blocks. Rely less and less on your hands if you can. You know, you don't have to do that today. Of course, over time, build it up. Toe heel the feet in a little bit closer, and then what you're going to do is step the feet just a little bit wider than the shoulders. Now position yourself if you need blocks, of course. So if I held something that had some weight, much easier to squat. Try not to squat all the way down. Like work it and see the difference. Like, it's not bad to sit all the way down, especially if you're, squatting for, an extensive time limit, like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. I can squat for a really, really long time. So I'm not always active in it, but build up a squat throughout the day, 30 seconds here, a minute eventually, and then you could collectively start to squat for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and however long, once you build up enough of it, like I said, it'll be more of a resting position. So I'm going to bring my hands back behind me, and I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to come into a seated position. So have the feet together, have the knees wide, and push into the right thigh. So I'm pushing down into the leg, but I'm resisting the pressure of my hand. And this is really great if you were up against a wall, and then you could use both hands. But when I like pushing with one hand, because you can be a little bit more, gives you more information. You could bring the right hand down, bring the left hand on the left thigh, and then when you push into it, resist the pressure of your hand by lifting the leg up. And by lifting up, you'll get more space into the hip. You'll certainly get more strength. And then bring both of your hands back in space, and then push the knees apart. Get the knees to move apart. Get yourself to be nice and upright. I'm just a little bit off the floor. I started this very beginning of the class. And then bring the hips down, and then I'm going to take my feet as wide as, say, a little bit wider than my shoulders. And I'm going to move my knees to the right side for more of like a 90-90 stretch. And I could sit upright, which will be more specific for the left hip. Now, you don't have to lift the left foot up off the floor, but think it's lifting. And that's what will drive the inner thigh in more. And then you could also think that the right leg is lifting, to you. And then it's just really good prep for like pigeon, double pigeon, poses like that, right? But this could be your practice. I'm going to come forward with my hands, but keep a really, really good extension through the torso so that it's more hip specific. Not that it's bad to collapse or round, right? It's just, you have back pain, keep extension. I'm going to use a block. I'm going to squeeze into the block with my arms and then come forward. So I have to rely more on the stability of my hip, and I have to, it's adding more leverage into the tissues of the rotators. And then bring yourself up. Stay upright again. If you really lack internal rotation in the left hip, just bring a little extra weight into the left side. Be really careful with that, because you don't want to obviously have too much weight. And then come forward, keep extending up. And then bring yourself back up. Now use your hands, take the left knee up as best as you can. The right knee's going to come up too, right? But try to push out. So push the legs apart, lift the right knee up, go to the left, just so that you can, just so my back isn't to you, I'm gonna come straight forward. So my left leg is at a 90, and I'm gonna use my hands to come forward. I'm keeping a really, really good extension through the spine, getting more, of a stretch through my left hip. I'm gonna bring myself up. Now again, it's not better without the hands, but you can try it both ways, and you can judge for yourself. So when you're coming forward, again, I like this because it's more leverage into the hip. I've done when I was really younger, I did a lot of very dynamic training. So it's almost like when I'm exposing my hips in yoga, it almost feels like the same effects of like me running up a hill with some guy on my back. I mean, it's like it almost feels the same, like in reverse. So I'm moving myself forward. I'm bringing myself up. I want to come forward again. Right? And the moment you come forward, there's more leverage, and then the body kind of gets used to that, and it's almost easy. Not that it's bad, right? But going in the pose, out of the pose really has its place. And then bring yourself back up, and then when you come back up, what you're gonna do is have your knees bent. And with your knees bent, I'm gonna have my hands underneath my shoulders. I'm gonna push through the hands and extend through the chest. My hands could be a lot of different positions, so turned out is the easiest way. So it's a really good way. Lift through the hips, connect into your hamstrings. Keep your head like this, because I'm gonna move a little bit. I'm gonna move forward towards the feet. So getting more of the front of the shoulder. So it's really popular in yoga is interlacing the fingers, taking the arms overhead, which really is difficult to do on your own, like to develop it really more deeply. So not that that's a bad way, right? This is just a more progressive way of doing it, not necessarily better. Then bring yourself up. I like this because for a moment, you're loading up the arm, the shoulder. And let's say you don't necessarily know it's good for you, it's just a couple seconds. Some people will be like, oh, I'm gonna hold this for 2-3 minutes, and then they come out of it and they're like, oh, well, my shoulder's messed up. So I like just a few seconds and then building up to more, like 30 seconds a minute. Take the head back in space if you can, drive through the heels. You literally feel the shoulders can turn out more, especially if you have a difficult time like in back bending. Then bring the head forward and bring the hips down. And then when you bring the hips down, I'm gonna take my left foot outside of my right hip and step my right foot over my left knee. Now, if you can't do that, the left leg could be forward, and you don't have to step over. But I'm gonna step this over. I'm gonna take my left arm around, and this is not the classical way of doing it, but I'm getting my left shoulder to be lower. And it's really a lot of exposure into the posterior of the hip. So you could get creative and support your head on your knee, and not that you have to get as low as you can, but let's say you don't feel the effects into the hip, you don't have to do that. But it's a nice way to eventually get you again into doing pigeon and double pigeon. So stay here if you're really liking this in your back and in your hip, or bring yourself up, and then when you come up, what I'm going to do is have the block behind me so that I can sit up nice and tall and straight. But also what's good is keeping the arm connected, the left arm, and then I'm going to take the right hand back just enough to expose more of the chest and the shoulders. And when you're doing triangle or side angle, like just straight up and vertically, this is really the same line. It's just how do you move your arm more up in space? It's difficult to do, but on the floor or like a chair, I have like a little table here. I could bring it on the table, and then you can create more and more space between the shoulders, which is valuable, right? I'm gonna come out of this. If I'm done, I'm gonna bend the knees. I'm gonna take the right foot outside of the left hip, and then have the left foot over the right knee. And I'm gonna take my right arm around the left shin, and then as the arm is around the leg, again, it's through the hip, and say you still ride a bike, or you cycle, or you run. These muscles are strong, but they're also really, really tight. So you do a lot of running and stuff like that. Like a class like this is good, but you don't want to you want to go from two spectrums, one end of the spectrum to the other. Like if you did like a marathon or something like that, you'd want to ease into your yoga again. You wouldn't want to just go full on doing split work. So I'm getting low with my shoulder, and then it's exposing more and more of my hip. So what's popular in yoga is getting the foot into the crease of the arm. This is leading to that, Not that that's better, this is more subtle. You could bring yourself up, and then you could get the right arm around the left leg, and then the left hand is behind you. And then I could keep it here, of course, right? I could sink down. You could slide your foot underneath the hip or sit on a block, and then take the left hand out to the side. As you take it out to the side, you can get a good lift. Broad shoulders, broad upper back. Take a couple deep breaths here. And then you could turn forward and you could release the arm and the leg. So we're gonna go back onto the back and do a bit of bridge work. So lie back on your back, have your blocks with you. And then as you lie back on your back, have your hands over your elbows, have your feet underneath your knees, and then press through the feet and lift through the hips. And you don't have to lift really, the common mistake that some people make and is just get the hips to be higher, which has its place, but you really want to be moving from is the spine. So get a deep lift through the lower back into the thoracic, and the majority is the thoracic, and the thoracic only extends so much. So where you want to get more, to assist the extension to eventually, do a wheel, is from the shoulders. Some is from the hips, but a lot of it is from the shoulders. So you want to get the shoulders involved more. I'm going to take my right leg up off the floor, just pull it in, just some single leg work. And it's good because then you can kind of see which glute is working better. And then bring the right foot down and lift the left leg up. So actually my left glute is stronger than my right. So I can feel it on my right side, but not nearly as much on my left. So, you could come down and repeat the right if, you were like myself. I'm going to take my right leg up again, but cross the left leg over top and literally think that I'm helping to pull your leg forward away from the capsule. So it's not that it's going to be a deep rotation, but it'll help. And then drive through the left heel, keep the hips up, bring the right foot down. And every once in a while, again, just think of which facets in your back that don't necessarily move as much. If you were lying on your belly and someone pushed into the spine a little bit, you can actually feel what joints may or may not move. You can take the left leg on top of the right. You can push through the right foot. You can elevate through the pelvis. Good deep rotation in the left thigh and hip. A couple deep breaths. Just good training for, because again, each leg is uniquely different. Bring the left foot down. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the block underneath me on the lowest level. So if you're a person that goes high, of course you can go high, but low is deceptively good because it's something that you can relax a little bit more in. And by relaxing, it really makes a difference, obviously, in your nervous system, but it transfers over into the physical body. Keep the legs bent or bring the left leg forward. And then I'm pointing my left foot up. So this is more, an active way of doing it. So I'm trying to get my hips to be level and then my left leg is forward. And I said this earlier about my psoas and my hip, and my left side's it just needs more extension. You're extending through the front of your left hip. I'm going to bring my left leg in and then bring my right leg forward, and just to kind of see the difference, it's pretty consistent for me. I feel it on my right side, but not nearly as much on my left. So I really have my left leg forward more in positions. I'm going to bring the legs back. I'm going to come up with my hips and then take the block to the second level. And it's going to be a more obvious stretch. So you would think oh, that's what I need. And it could be, right? But that's why it's good to kind of cycle the heights and the intensity or whatever that you're doing, so that you always have a good perspective of what's actually healthy for you, as opposed to what's, because you could contort and not really know that you're doing damage to yourself because your body gets really used to that. You can bring the left leg in and bring the right leg forward. Again, just to give you, but I really need more tailbone down. So the good thing about the block is that it's pulling my tailbone down, right? I could bend the knees. I could lift up. I'm just running out of time and I want to give you something to counter the back bends. So you could take the block up out of you and then you could bring it down, and as you're down, you can just have the knees in. I'm going to do a supine twist. So have the knees bent, have a block in between the thighs, and with your knees bent and your knees over to the right, I'm going to take my left arm in a circular motion overhead. Your spine is designed to do this rotation. So it's not that just a static rotation is bad, right? But it's good to move if you need more movement. I could take the arm out. I'm just kind of running out of space because of the wall that's behind me. And then you could look up to the ceiling, take the knees up, take the knees over to the left side, and then with the knees to the left, my left arm's out to the left, I'm going to trace my arm overhead. I'm going to keep looking at it. As you look to the hand, it's more extension. And then you're rolling into the shoulder in the back. I'm going to follow the hand back into the original position, reach beyond the bottom arm, and then do it again. And then as you take it out, again, it's in advanced forms of yoga, you're eventually doing rotational back bends. So this is really basic, but it's really the same thing. That makes sense. And then you could stay more on your twist or do more, stretch out your legs. But you could also lie back on your back in a Shavasana. I really like blocks underneath the knees for anterior tilts of the pelvis. So if you're a posterior pelvis person and you've got a flat, like your back is like herniated, you'd want something underneath your lower back like a towel, but that's going to give you a little bit of a lift. But if you're a person that has like kind of like a sway back, like a gymnast, think of a gymnast, like a female gymnast has this great kind of lordotic extension. You don't want to be always extending. So when the blocks and a bolster underneath the feet, it'll pull that overextension into a more natural line. You can have your hands on you, beside you, and you can let go of any kind of filtration in the throat. I mean, it's good to know how to turn off. I know people that they just always are breathing deep, and it's okay in different seasons, right? Like wintertime, right? Something like that, but you don't want to build up too much heat, especially as it gets, warmer out. You don't want to burn out. And I would love for you to spend more time on your back if you have the time. But let's say you're ready and you want to move again, or you just, you have somewhere to be. You could bring awareness back into your hands, your feet. You could bend the knees. You could roll to your right or your left side, whichever side you have more space. You could use your hands. You could bring yourself back up. And then when you come up, I like, one block if that's all I have. But if I have 2 blocks, I prefer that just because you really don't have enough space to support. I'm a smaller person, but I like the support, and then I can really extend up. So I could turn my palms up, I could slide the hands back. As I'm up, I'm gonna look and try to see that I'm more in the middle. It's harder to find. You can bring the hands together if you like. It's just a gesture of thanks. I hope you had a great class today. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a beautiful weekend, and hopefully I'll be in contact with you guys. All right, namaste.